What is good, people? Welcome back to another video on Off-Field Antics, and in today's video it's another edition of that FPL show. We are moving into Game Week 11, and today me and Rod are going to tell you what we're going to do ahead of Game Week 11. We're going to look back on what happened in Game Week 10. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. Let us know who you're captaining this week in the comment section down below. Like I said, we are joined by the man who was born in the shadows, born in the darkness, raised there. How are you, Rod?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's been a crazy week personally, and it's been some interesting games and some disappointing games, which we're going to get onto, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I guess we should get straight into it. Last game week was, I guess you could say, a fairly disappointing one on my part. I really just didn't have too many standout players. Cancelo absolutely balled out, as did Martinelli. But neither of them were my captain choice. I went with Haaland because I felt like if I went 3 weeks in a row without captaining Haaland, I'd look a bit mad. So I went with Haaland. He picked up 12. It wasn't the greatest. Other than that, like I said, the squad kind of disappointed. Trippier is still the number one FPL asset for me in defence. This guy's just been so solid all season with the points he's picked up, and I called it at the start of the season how good his value was, and no one wanted to listen, but now they all listen, Rod. But yeah, pretty much, I guess a disappointing one. I'm going to have to make some moves coming into this week, and I've already made, and we're going to talk about those later on. But we're going to move to you, Rod, because you had a slightly better week. I finished on 66. You finished on 72. Are you happy with that, or...?
Difference was Andreas Pereira. 6 points big from him. Am I happy? I thought Trent was a differential this week. I thought maybe he'd do something. Came away with 0 points. That's 2 0-pointers in 2 games. And now he's injured, so that's one to think about. But like you said, mate, Trippier ticks along so nicely. See Cancelo balling, Zaha getting an assist. But overall, mate, I think it was about an average week. I did get a small green arrow, which was nice. Puts me 144k. But there's something to build on, mate. And I've got some dilemmas ahead of next week with obviously James getting injured last night, Trent injured. So there's a few things to think about.
Yeah, I was looking at your squad earlier on, and before we did the show, and I thought he's got quite a few injuries there. Like, just not necessarily big injuries, because like you don't even know what it is really with Reece James yet. But some small knocks, and you don't know if you're going to have to move things around. How many transfers are you working with, Rod?
Just the one this week, mate.
Just the one. Okay, I've got the 2, and I've already made my moves. I'm willing to already kind of show you what I have done. I brought in Wilfried Zaha and Odsonne Edouard, and I got rid of... Oh shit, who did I get rid of? I could tell you right now. I got rid of Guedes and Mitrovic, and I brought in Zaha. And
Mitrovic before Bournemouth. Interesting.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. Where is my team pick? Yeah, I just got rid of him because I wanted Zaha badly. I think Fulham do have a really good fixture in Bournemouth. That's why Andreas is my second benchman right now. But Mitrovic kind of been struggling with that injury he got, so I'm not 100% sure if he's going to, play a full 90 and how effective he will be in that full 90. I've been a big fan of Fulham at home this year, but we're going to have to wait and see for that one. But we were talking about last week how good Zaha is in terms of his value and the fixtures that Crystal Palace have. And I also brought in Edouard. He's on the bench at the moment, but potentially could start. Still got Reece James in the starting 11. The knock. They are playing Aston Villa, so I do think they are pretty healthy for some good points there if he is to start. But other than that, just the same, Rod. Have you decided what you're going to do yet?
No, I'm stuck at the moment, to be honest, mate. Maybe look to get Trent out, but like I said, there's not really any options. So I've got James, who's a doubt, but the press conferences in the next couple of days will shed a bit more light on that. But I haven't really thought about it too much. I think I'm going to go off the pressers in the next couple of days and see what they're saying before I make any decisions. But Edouard, I like. Edouard played well again last game. His minutes He is obviously the favoured striker at the moment, but he is not likely to play 90.
Yeah, I was checking out his minutes because before that he was kind of a mixed bag. But in the last 2 game weeks, he's been averaging around 80 minutes, so coming off and around like the 84th or the 85th. So I like his value. Fairly cheap up front. There are quite a few really good striking options this year. Obviously, Haaland's a must, and Jesus is probably another must-have. But other than that, there's a couple I really like. I was really tempted to bring in some Chelsea players this week. I really like the look of Mason Mount in midfield. I think his value is pretty low compared to what I believe his output may be under Graham Potter, because from what I've seen so far with Chelsea, Mount looks like he's going to be Potter's main man on the pitch. I saw him in midweek against Milan. I thought he's really good. I think he's going to pick up a few goals this season and definitely quite a few assists. The other Chelsea guy I really like is Aubameyang. I think, I remember when he was coming towards the end at Arsenal, I thought he's kind of finished. Didn't watch too much of him at Barcelona, but to be honest, he's looking like primetime Aubameyang right now for Potter. He looks really good, so it's kind of hard to pass up on him, but I really like the Crystal Palace fixtures.
Yeah, Palace are players you're going to want. I don't mind maybe Gay for 4.4. I think it's gone up to 4.5 now. Eze, I think Eze is a huge option if Zaha wasn't on penalties. I think Zaha being on penalties kind of justifies the extra 2 million or so that it is. But yeah, I think Hodgson I really, really like.
Yeah, I like Hodgson. Mateta was the other one, but he just doesn't seem to be getting the same amount of love at the moment. I think it's kind of hard with Crystal Palace because they don't really depend on their strikers as much. I feel like their strikers are really more team players and role players in the squad because they haven't really ever settled on one number 9. And, I think they've just kind of built the team around Zaha and around Eze. It'd be interesting to see, what Elise can eventually do in this squad, because I do think as time goes on, he's going to become more of a, big role in that starting 11. But yeah, Rod, I'm fairly happy moving into next week. Last week, it was a bit of a weird run, right? Because it wasn't the highest scoring of game weeks, but it was still quite high scoring, I guess. I seem to be really low for quite some time, Rod. It all started on Saturday, though, and there were some interesting games. Chelsea picking up another 3 points against Wolves. I was really impressed with them. I think before the season, I predicted Chelsea to finish 8th or 7th under Tuchel, but that's gone now. I think if Tuchel would have stayed, that definitely could have been an outcome, but Potter has got them boys firing. I'm a big fan. The only other team that played on Saturday I really wanted to talk about was Newcastle. They beat Brentford 5-1. Very impressive. I just want to kind of talk about the recruitment they've got, because the players they're signing are, Bruno Mars is one of my favourite players to watch right now in the Premier League. The way he runs that midfield and runs the Newcastle squad, what a player.
100%, mate. I think huge victory over Brentford, completely dominated. And yeah, like you said, Guimaraes in the midfield, mate, he's world class talent, mate. And obviously, when you've got Wilson, who's been on form, and you've got Trippier to back that up, and overall, mate, they look solid. Every player knows his role. They work really, really well as a team, and tactically, they're very well organised and creative. And it helps when you've got some big players who can produce big things. With obviously, I think you got a brace on the weekend.
Guimaraes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do believe so, yeah. But it's Almiron as well, like someone who is, kind of written off as a good, hard-working player, but he's putting in really decent performances now, and overall, I'm just interested to watch Newcastle. They're one of the teams that, starting the season, I was most intrigued by, and as the season's gone on, my kind of levels of interest in them haven't died down yet, and they're still a team I want to watch a hell of a lot more, because they're such a good watch right now, because they don't really have boring games. So it's always a bonus with them. Move on to Sunday though, Rod. We had some big fixtures. I guess we'll start off with Arsenal. They beat Liverpool 3-2. I guess the question coming out of this one is,
VAR.
are no, I was going to say, are Arsenal in a title race?
I think they're definitely putting up the credentials to be in a title race. I do want to see what will happen when the games begin to pick up and they're in more tournaments, because they have. I wouldn't say they have the most squad depth ever. They have got a bit of it, but a couple injuries and that will take a big hit. And when the players are playing 90 minutes a couple times at least a week, it's going to be quite an overload. But going off what they've put up in the Premier League so far, I think they've been incredibly solid. I think they've been good. Each player, I think, all across the board has done his job well, and that contributes to the position they're in right now. And I think they haven't beat Liverpool in a while, and obviously to beat them 3-2, they're going to be ridiculously pleased with that. And Martinelli was a standout player, and he just looked absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, Martinelli's one of those guys right now. I think he's performing up there with some of the best players in the Premier League. He's definitely one of the top performers this year. Apparently, he wants a new contract where he's going to be earning, the same amount as some of the big earners at Arsenal, and I think that's fully deserved. If he's going to continue on with this form, he's definitely going to have to be one of those players if he's going to stick around. I guess I was more impressed with the fact that, Arsenal are a team who I just feel like you can beat them mentally, and they just proved me wrong in that game. I felt like every time Liverpool got back into the game, equalising, I thought Liverpool would go on to kind of take it to them, but Arsenal was straight back on the attack, and they're such a good team this year because I feel like they've got that mental stability which they haven't had in the past, and they've got that ability not to panic and not to just, throw your hands up in the air. Like Granit Xhaka losing his shit or something like that. It's not happening at the moment. I think you mentioned VAR, and they did kind of get lucky, I'd say, with the Gabriel penalty shout. Personally, it's kind of close, but the way his arm is, would have understood if they give a penalty. And then to see the handball against Rashford, against Everton, it just doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth. With referees now, I've just come to accept there's no point even trying because they all give different stuff. It's like, for me, in a referee, all I want is consistency. If he's bad, that's okay, but at least you're consistent at what you're doing. I feel like the problem with the Premier League right now is there's a new rule every week, and it's just hard to stay on track of. I felt like the referee last night in the Chelsea-Milan match was absolutely shocking, but he was consistent. He was consistently giving yellow cards for everything, so you kind of know what level you're on. It's just not like that in the Premier League right now. You're muted, Rod.
Something can be given, the next game it's not given. Like you just said, consistency, and there is zero of it, where there's some really weird decisions, and I think you could understand it if it was across the board they were making these decisions. There's something to back it up, sort of thing. But when it's so sporadic and they change the rules each year, it's hard to really understand what's going on. And I think as an Arsenal fan, you're going to be pleased, but I think there were a couple of decisions that could have easily gone against them. And it could have same both ways. And over the course of the season, you'd hope it balances out, but it rarely does. But Liverpool are going to look at a game where, once again, they just weren't at it, and it's actually quite worrying times for Liverpool.
Man, I just don't know where they go from it in terms of their squad. They are lacking still. The thing is, they let a player like Mane go and they replace him with like one player. I don't think it's enough. I didn't even rate Mane that highly. I think he was a really good player. I don't think he was as elite as some people were saying, but still, you have to back him up with more depth and stuff like that. And they don't really invest in a squad. They invest in a starting 11, Liverpool. And I think that's where it backfires. Obviously, we've got the Klopp 7-year thing, and I'm not sure what's going to go on there because, for me, he's the best manager they've had in a while, yet I just feel like, despite him being the best manager they've had in some time, he still hasn't won much. He's won a Premier League, Champions League, and that's all right.
I think that's still he's won more Champions Leagues than Pep in his life in his time frame. But I think just Klopp has got the players to play the system this year. They needed midfielders. They didn't invest in the midfield. Nunes did not fit their initial style. Now they've got to try and incorporate him in. And they've had some big injuries. I mean, Trent injured now. Robbo was injured last game. Diaz is injured. Matip's injured. And obviously, everyone gets injuries. It's completely understandable. But I don't think Liverpool have done anything this year to... I mean, at the start of the year, we all had them competing with City, and it looks like they ain't going to go anywhere near City this year. And they just had a really, really poor start. And you thought first couple of games you'd let them off, fair enough, but they don't look themselves. And the big thing is the midfield. The midfield is almost non-existent, and in that high press system that they play, they have to be on it every game, and they haven't been. And City this weekend with quite a threadbare squad, it could be carnage.
Yeah, it could be. The only saving grace I guess they have is at Anfield. If it was at the Etihad, I would completely agree. But I do feel like it's going to be a more competitive game because of the fact it's at Anfield, and I think the way these teams kind of match up, they kind of counterbalance each other and stuff like that. So it's going to be an interesting game still. I'll move on to Everton versus United. This game was a bit of a roller coaster. Obviously, we kind of had the Casemiro mistake, which led to the Iwobi goal early on. I thought it could have been given a foul. I feel like sometimes you'd see it given as foul. Yes, it would have been soft, but it is what it is. And, I think Casemiro kind of learned from that mistake. I felt after that he was probably our man of the match in terms of, his ability to win back the ball, and when he had the ball, firing passes into, the more creative sort of players. And, a couple of times he did give the ball away, but it was a much more impressive performance than we're used to with McTominay. And it was really nice to see him play and have an impact in the side. Ronaldo had to come on after Anthony Martial injured himself in the warm-up. And, it's such a shame that happened because, you're trying to give the lad, a chance to be the outright number 9 in the squad. And, he just can't seem to keep fit, and he's such a talent still. I know he's been in the Premier League for ages and he's had hot and cold spells, but at the start of this season, he was in some form coming into it before he picked up the injury, and I was really excited for him. But Ronaldo played. Ronaldo did get his goal in the end, and he took it really well on the counter-attack after Casemiro put him through. I was kind of questioning coming into the game if Ronaldo really was finished after seeing him in midweek against the Cyprus team, and he just looked horrible, could not find the ball, put it in the back of the net, save his life. It was like he was playing in a charity match and players were passing it to him to score for sympathy. But in the Everton game, I was surprised, man. I thought he looked much more dangerous up front. Took his goal really well, but it was the off-the-ball stuff which really impressed me. Sometimes he's tracking back and applying pressure on someone and putting in a tackle. So I was excited to see that, and I'm happy to see he's back. Anthony picked up another goal, and I think he's looking like a very tasty FPL asset. I think it is 7.8 or 7.6 million. He's very tasty at that sort of price. Other than that, Rashford had a goal disallowed for a handball, which was definitely a questionable one. He was under the cosh at the end with which seemed like an aerial barrage coming in, but we managed to see it out and get 3 points, which I think was huge.
Yeah, I just had to listen to all your analysis, mate, because unfortunately I couldn't catch the game. But I think, as we've probably seen this year, Everton aren't the team they were last year. I think they look more solid across the board. I think they've actually been coached quite well over the summer, and I think they played the formation and their style better this year. They look more solid, and it looked like they made it quite a hard game for you.
You know what? I wasn't that impressed with them in the game. I felt they had players in that midfield that really could challenge us physically, like Onana. I remember Onana and Casemiro went for a 50-50 and they went shoulder to shoulder. And Casemiro just went absolutely flying. He's huge, Onana, in that midfield. But overall, They didn't really do too much, in all honesty. They obviously threatened towards the end with they had about like 15 corners in a row, just all in on top of the hair, and it was rough for the time being because I felt like United thoroughly deserved all 3 points, and the Rashford goal, if it would have stood, it would have been kind of easy just to see the game out, but they disallowed it for a handball after. I think it was Tarkowski went in with a challenge. Rashford had to jump to get out the way of getting absolutely slaughtered. The ball ricocheted off Tarkowski onto Rashford's chest, then shoulder, then underneath his armpit, and they give a handball for it. So it was one of those. I understand what they're saying. The ball cannot touch any part of the hand or the arm in terms of the build-up for a goal, but when it's inevitable, it's in such close quarters and you cannot stop the ball from doing it, it seems a bit harsh, especially after last year when I think it was Nottingham Forest or Middlesbrough in the FA Cup against United literally handled the ball to control it before scoring and the goal stood. But overall, like I said, I felt like United were pretty comfortable in the game and I wasn't too impressed by Everton. But it was really good to see some of United, to get back into form. We've got a couple of really tricky fixtures coming up. Newcastle on the weekend, followed by Spurs. And these are going to be the games which really give you that sort of insight to where United are. I think, they went on a decent streak, but, that game against City was obviously too much too soon. Got absolutely battered, I guess. And, a good win against Everton, but now this is the real test for me because United are going for top 4 and these are the games you have to win if you want to be in there. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, these are going to, like you said, give you an insight into where United are and how good they actually are, because I think you expect them to beat teams like Everton. No disrespect to Everton, but I think Newcastle, they want to be up there, obviously Tottenham, etc. So it's going to give us an indicator. But yeah, it's like you said about Marshall as well earlier on. I was excited to see what he was going to be like. Maybe he could become an FPL option, but it seems that injuries got the better of him again. So, yeah.
Mate, do you know what it is with him? I think he'd be so good this season. The format he's been showing, even when he came back in midweek, Ronaldo was struggling all game long. Then he scores with his first touch. It was just that sort of form he's been in this year. So unfortunate to pick up the injury. But Anthony, man, this guy just keeps scoring. I haven't even been that impressed by any of his performances. I think we've seen, sort of glimpses of what he's capable of. I love the fact that he's willing to, come back and, fight for the team when needed. But I also like the fact that sometimes he's not greedy and he will find that pass, but other times he's just losing his head and shooting all the time. But I guess I've been kind of impressed in spells, but we haven't seen that much from him and he keeps scoring goals. I feel like this guy is going to be a decent FPL asset, especially the way United go, because Sancho's not really too much of a goal scorer when he comes back into the side on that left, I do presume. But yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. Malacia was out of the squad for Luke Shaw, who it's good to see we've got some actual competition in the squad now, but it's an interesting one for, see what eventually happens. Forest 1, Aston Villa 1. Rod, talk me through it. I feel like you've been, on the same sort of position for a while now. That, you didn't think Jared Wood's the right man coming in the first place, but you understood, that he was being backed and you were going to continue to support him through the rough spell and nothing was getting better. But surely now you are Jared out, because this is, like we've said every week, one of the best Villa squads on paper I think I've ever seen. It might be better on paper than that 2007-2008 squad.
I mean, to have those attackers that we've got at our disposal and barely threaten Forest's goal. The only goal we scored was due to a bit of individual brilliance. It's embarrassing, mate. Like you summarised it very well. I understood why we got him. I'll back him, but I came into the season slightly optimistic, and then as it's gone on, I'm fed up, mate. It's awful to watch. And last week we played Leeds, barely broke them down. They were down to 10 for the majority of the game. Couldn't score. Trouble scoring this year, which is not what I thought it would be, because of simply the attackers that we have. And to have Coutinho and Buendia on the same pitch and not score because of them is crazy. And I think Coutinho's been awful as well. He's got his contract. He doesn't look like he's bothered anymore. And Gerrard, he picks his favourites, and I'm fed up, mate, to be honest. And I was hoping to wake up on Tuesday morning with a club statement. That didn't happen. I'm still hoping for a club statement, but I hope the owners are meant to be at the game this Sunday against Chelsea. I think if we want change, I think we've got to make ourselves heard. And I'm fed up, mate. It's just a waste of time, and we nearly lost to Forest, even though I think they didn't really create anything substantial.
Yeah, I was watching the game and it wasn't the most interesting game to watch, really. But I wanted to ask you, obviously you've got quite a lot of Villa friends you got a load of friends in general, to be honest, Rod, but in terms of your, the Villa fans that what are the sort of opinions around the fan base? Because I haven't really seen Gerrard out as much as I thought I would. I think you see from like the hardcore Villa fans that, Gerrard out is pretty much the thing, but I don't feel like it's what would you say, the most, I don't know what you would call it. It's not the most everyone's saying it. It doesn't feel like that right now. How does it feel for you?
I think, to be honest, mate, I think it's the majority of people saying it now. I think it's gone stale a year in. It'll be a year, I think, in the next couple of weeks. And I think the first initial few games, we played fantastic. We looked actually good. But I think you got to attribute that to new manager bounce. But then, for the large part of the second half of the season last year, we were poor. We've started this season, we've been poor. But I think, mate, it's pretty universal now amongst Villa fans that I think people are fed up, and we shouldn't be where we are. And I'd understand if we were playing good stuff, creating things, and looking like more of a team, but there's no flow, and it doesn't look like we work on any patterns of play in training. I don't know what we do in training, if we train at all, because it's pretty abysmal, mate. And we've come out of a spell of games that we should have won more than we did, and the only game we did win against Southampton was pure luck. I thought we were poor again. I thought we were poor against Leeds. Obviously, we created a lot, but couldn't score. But he sticks to his favourites. His favourites being McGinn, poor all season. I must say, credit to Mings. I think Mings has been fantastic when he's had to play this year. And I've always liked Mings when he just does the basics, does the defending, doesn't bother with trying to play football, just headers, tackles, everything like that. But I'm fed up, mate. But then, get rid of him. I don't know who's out there, mate. I'd love Poch Ball. I've even come to a point where I wouldn't even mind fucking Tuchel Ball at this point.
No, mate, you do not want that. You don't want that, Rod. That is going complete to the dark side. You've got Total Football, and then on the opposite end, you've got Tuchel Ball. I think it's nuts, right? Because if I would have told you, that, after 9 games, you'd be 1 point behind Liverpool and you'd want Gerrard out at the start of the season.
I'll just say that.
It is nuts, right? But yeah, I agree. I think there are going to be some options out there for you. I think you probably want to get it done sooner rather than later, though. I think if you get it done before the World Cup, kind of get your priority set for the January transfer window. I think there's a couple of players in that squad that are really underperforming, like you said. McGinn, for a player who we both, I feel like, love, I think as a player, he's everything you kind of want in terms of that energetic box-to-box midfielder. He's going to put in a hard challenge and really stick up for the team. He's just not performing to the levels we're used to. I don't know if that is more of a reality, because for the last 2 years, I think he's been unreal.
Completely, mate. Towards the end of last year, he was poor, and this year he's been horrific, mate. And it's crazy because he's come from being brilliant to being quite poor, and he's a captain, so he's rarely dropped. Whereas obviously we've had some big injuries, but then Dendoncker came on Monday, and I thought he looked solid. And I don't mind Dendoncker sitting there with Dougie and Ramsey in front of him, but I'm not sure the squad are playing for him anymore, which is quite concerning considering we're a year in. I know our owner, he used to be football director at Liverpool, so obviously he had those ties with Gerrard, and I think that was a driving force in getting Gerrard. I think the owners now have to make a ruthless decision. Well, I wouldn't even say it's ruthless. They have to make a decision for the benefit of the club, and I think, unfortunately, he has to go. And I didn't want him in the first place, and I've always said it, but he's there, so you've got to back him. But now it's showing me why I didn't want him, because we just look like a completely disjointed team, and there's just... I couldn't tell you a style of play. It's pretty abysmal, mate, so I'm fed up, to be honest. Yeah. And I just think he has to go. He has to go.
2 last questions before we move on. I just wanted to say, how comfortable are you in the fact that you feel like the owners will get rid of Gerrard this season, or do you think they'll stick with him to the end? And if they do stick with him to the end, how comfortable are you with the fact that you will stay up? Because I think you're too good with the players you got on paper, but you're close to the drop zone, and now some sides in the drop zone which I think are too good to go down, like a Wolves, like a Leicester. So
this year, I don't think we've been... I think we've been one of the worst teams in the league this year. Like you said, that is a big concern, even though it shouldn't be because of the players we have. But I don't think we're better than many people. Forest bottom, I don't think we're better than them.
Mate, look at the league right now. In 11th place, you got Brentford, who's a side who I like, and I don't think we're ever going to go down. A lot of people did. Fulham are in 9th, and Bournemouth are in 8th. That means the bottom 3 right now is Leicester, Forest, and Wolves. Southampton followed by Villa and Crystal Palace. It's hard, man.
What does give me hope is I think we're in a similar position come... I think it must have been November last year, or maybe it was around this year with Dean Smith, and the owner said they didn't see progression on the previous year, so they did get rid of him, and that was a big decision made by them. So that's why I do have faith, because there is no progression from last year as it stands. The record is worse than Smith last year, and we played more beautiful things under Smith. So I think we lose this weekend. I think he has to go. And I fully believe the owners will do that because of the money they've put into it, and there's just no style of play, mate. And it's bar Paul, he hasn't done anything.
Yeah, I agree, man. I just want to talk to you now before we get into our predictions for the weekend. I want to talk about captaincy in FPL because this is a weekend where I'm kind of struggling right now. I feel like for you, you're probably just going to be on the Haaland train. But for me, I don't see it as short-sighted. I feel like you got to look at the bigger picture this weekend, and I feel like at Anfield, Haaland isn't necessarily a guarantee. He has been pretty much in every game he's played this season, so it makes it hard for me to say that. But I'm not too sure where to go with the captaincy. I think there are a few options I could go down the route of. I think Haaland's definitely one still. Jesus leads away. Martinelli leads away. Son against Everton at home. Just a Cancelo even maybe as a defender against Liverpool. What are your sort of thoughts right now? Because I'm struggling.
I think there are a lot of options this week, which does make it quite nice because hopefully it's spaced out. But I cannot see it being spaced out. I think there's a large portion are going to be on Haaland. Liverpool are down to obviously no Trent. I think Robbo is back in training now. No Matip. No Diaz. They are taking some hits, and City just looked phenomenal this year. And Haaland, I mean, he scores against Liverpool. I think it'll be the 8th game in a row he scored. I think it's probably going to be a City asset, even though you look at that Liverpool game, you didn't think in a million years he'd captain anyone this time last year against Liverpool, but I think Haaland's a huge choice. But I can see the Martinelli pick. I can see Jesus to a certain degree, but even I think if I had a Chelsea asset in maybe Mount or Aubameyang, I wouldn't be opposed to captaining them against Villa. But there are a lot of options, to be completely honest, mate. Who are you leaning towards?
So right now I've got 3. I'd probably lean towards most. I'd probably say Haaland, Martinelli, and the one who I really like right now is Son. I really like Son, and I know he hasn't shown the greatest form, but I feel like the matchups make the games. It's like in fights when you say, the matchups make the fights, and every fight's different. You can't just do maths of, oh, he wasn't good against them, so he's not going to be good against them. I feel like Son suits the game against Everton. The way Everton play, I feel like in terms of the speed at the back, they are lacking with Cody and Tarkowski. They're very slow. I feel like Son could get in behind, maybe Kane drags someone deep and Son gets in behind and maybe gets a couple goals. And there's always more value in midfielders than there are in strikers, as we always say. That's why it's tough for me. I really don't know, though. I feel like it's a real gamble. I feel like this week is a week where you go against the grain and you could get huge results, or you could fall very far behind. It's one of those. I feel like if I go with Son and he blanks, and all of a sudden Haaland just rips out, gets a hat-trick against Liverpool, I fuck myself over.
There are choices, and you're a gambling man, so I wouldn't be surprised if you do go for a wild card out there and go for someone who people wouldn't have gone for. So, if anyone, you are the man to do that.
Yeah, if you have made it this far into the video, let me know you were captain in my squad and let me know who you are captain in personally. Right now, I'm probably on Son, but it may change. It's between Martinelli and Haaland and Son. But we'll have to wait. Are you 100% Haaland right now?
No, I'm 85%.
Who are your other options? So
my other option would be Zaha.
Zaha against Leicester away.
15%.
I was going to say Maddison as well, but I don't know. It's hard with Maddison. He might be someone that actually move out in a bit. I might give him a couple game weeks before moving out. Maybe I'll move him out after World Cup. We'll have to wait.
I am starting 2 Fulham players though, which I didn't think I would do.
Yeah, they're kind of nuts, man. Andreas, I think, is really good value, especially on some of the set pieces and that. And Mitrovic, he's just an animal, especially at home. If that injury's not, hindering him at all, he should be firing on all cylinders. I guess we'll get into our predictions, Rod. It starts on Friday. Brentford against Brighton. I'll let you kick this one off.
Really, really intriguing game, to be honest, mate. 2 teams that play good football. I think Brighton plays slightly better football than Brentford, with Brentford more of a counter-attacking team. But it's quite a nice fixture, mate, for a Friday night. I'm going to go 2-2.
Yeah, I agree. I think these are 2 teams that actually play decent football. Thomas Frank's still one of my favourite managers in terms of his personality and just openness to the press. I'm going to go with a Brentford win here. I'm going to go 3-1 Brentford. I think Tony gets on the score sheet back-to-back weeks. Leicester against Crystal Palace. I'll kick this one off. I feel like this could be a high-scoring game. I think Leicester are still appalling at the back, as they proved against Forest on the weekend. I still feel like they've got something in them on the other side of the pitch if they can get things going. I think Maddison is an important player for them. I do think Daka's going to keep getting more chances as Vardy seems to fade out of the squad. I'm going to go over 3-2 Crystal Palace here.
It's an interesting fixture, this. I think I can see what was selected for television. I think Palace are going to take it to Leicester here. Leicester being at home is probably their saving grace. But I do fancy Palace taking it to Leicester and making it a good game. I'm going to go 3-2. I think it's going to be a cracker, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be interesting. You going 3-2 Palace as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fulham against Bournemouth. I think it's going to be intriguing to see how Fulham line up and if Mitrovic is fit. I'm going to take it that Mitrovic is fit, and I'm going to go with a Fulham 2-1. But if Mitrovic isn't kind of firing, I guess this could be a lot closer. I think Bournemouth have been impressive in the past couple of game weeks. I think if Tavernier can, make the impact that he did against Leicester, they'll have a good chance. I'm going to go 2-1 Fulham.
Yeah, I've been impressed by Fulham, to be honest, this year. I kind of wrote them off at the start of the year, but probably my bias towards how they usually do in Premier League seasons. But they have impressed me, to be honest, mate. And if Mitro is back, I think with Pereira behind him, I think they're going to score 3 goals. So I'm going to go 3-1 Fulham.
Fair enough, yeah, man. Wolves against Forest. Wolves, I want them to do well. They've got some really interesting players, but they just don't live up to the sort of the billing, I guess. I'd love to see more of them being an expansive team because, in my opinion, Ruben Neves is one of those players. It's criminal he's still at Wolves. Youngest ever Porto captain. I think at the time it was the highest fee ever paid by a championship club to get him. And he's still there, and it's just getting a bit boring. I'd love to see him at a big top sort of side. I think he'd fit into someone like an Arsenal perfectly. But like I said, they've got some really interesting players, but the way they play just doesn't suit them, I guess. So I'm going to go 0-0.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a shocker, mate. I think they are still looking for a new manager, which does have some bearing on the way they play and kind of, their confidence and mentality in general.
They should get Poch. Poch would suit them in terms of moving out from this boring sort of style.
Poch is coming to Villa.
Okay.
I'm going to also 0-0, mate.
Yeah. Spurs against Everton. I think interesting. Like we kind of said, Everton are definitely more of a team now who are capable of going into a game and, keeping a clean sheet. However, I do feel like with the firepower Spurs have, it's only a matter of time before they find one. I think they are going to expose the kind of slow centre-backs that they had. I felt like United did a good job of doing that at times. I'm going to go with a 3-0 Spurs win.
I think it's going to be interesting to see if Kane is fit. He did come off injured. It didn't look too bad, and he did train yesterday. But, yeah, Spurs, they've been interesting this year. I'm still trying to work out just how good they are. I think they've been good at times, but they've also been quite poor, and I think Everton have been more solid, and I think Everton have one of the best defensive records in the league this year, which is completely surprising after last year. But I'm going to go for a narrow 2-1 Spurs win.
Yeah, the only thing with that is Everton, I'm not sure where it is now after the United game, but they were the lowest conceding team, but they had a 0-goal difference, I think it was. So they're obviously not scoring enough either. So that's a problem for them. We'll go to Sunday, where the United game isn't being televised because we have to watch Villa versus Chelsea and watch Gerrard get the sack. And I think that is what's going to happen. I think this Chelsea squad have so many decent players, and now they've gotten rid of that Tuchel ball, terrorist ball merchant in Tuchel. I'm just starting to see so many different signs of life in this team and how much quality they've got. I think Mount is going to run the show eventually in this side. He's already showing sort of, spells of doing that, and I think it's only a matter of time. It's be interesting to see whether Reece James is fit or not. Obviously, he got a knock the other night against Milan. I think he's going to be very important long term for them. But I think they are going to get over the line against you. I think you could be on for a draw. I do see it possible that you get one of those sort of draws like you did against Man City. However, I think Chelsea might just be too much. So I'm going to go 3-1 Chelsea.
I hope they are too much. I've never thought I'd say that. I'm fed up, mate. And like you just said there, I would not be surprised for this to end 0-0, 1-1, and it simply prolongs the time. The owners hopefully will be there, and I can't see us being realistic. I can't see us beating them. I think we'll lose 2-0, but I won't be surprised with a 0-0 or 1-1 because that's kind of what happens. Play horrific and somehow draw against City. Yeah. No one's managed to do this year. So I'll buy on Newcastle.
Yeah, Leeds against Arsenal. You know what? In the past, I would have gone with a Leeds win here, with the fact that the performance at home and the mentality of Arsenal. But this new Arsenal team, I think, are going to be a bit of a menace for a while yet. I think, like you said, it's going to take a bit of time until the fixture overload sort of happens. But I am going to go with an Arsenal win. I'm going to go with a 2-0 win. I think Gabriel Martinelli. And you know what? Saliba probably gets on a clean sheet here because he loves a goal.
He does love a goal, and I think this is closer than a lot of people may think. I think you do look at Leeds and think you can target them, but I think that Ellen Road crowd, it just gives them a huge lift, and they're fantastic in terms of noise and atmosphere created. But I do think Arsenal, they will come out with a win, but it's going to be close. So I'm going to go 2-1.
Yeah, I think it could be close as well. Obviously, Leeds gave a really good performance against Chelsea when they beat them at Ellen Road. So, see, I'm not against the Leeds win here. I do think it's possible, but I just think with the form Arsenal have been shown, it's going to be hard. United against Newcastle. I hate this game, man. I think it's good that it's at Old Trafford. I think I'll go with a Newcastle win if it was at St James's, but at Old Trafford, I think we could pull out a result here. I think it's going to be probably on the counter-attack. I could see Newcastle getting on the ball a bit more than us, which is kind of anti-Ten Hag, because Ten Hag has been coming and for the most part, we've looked to keep possession a lot longer than we have in previous sort of systems. I just find it hard to pick. I really do. I think we've got the sort of players to hurt them on the break. It's whether or not we're effective on the day. Hopefully Casemiro starts. I think that's going to be important because I think that midfield battle is going to be crucial in this game. You see the two sets of midfielders on display, and it's kind of crazy how we lost supposedly one of the best midfielders in the world in Paul Pogba, and now our midfield is a lot better in my opinion. But yeah, I'm going to go with a draw. I'm going to go 1-1.
I do quite like this game. Obviously, my Villa fans are going to be biased. I'm pleased we're on TV. Well, I'm not really pleased, but I do quite like this game as a fixture, and I think it's going to be quite an end-to-end game, and a game I'm actually looking forward to watch, even though it's at the same time as Villa, so I won't watch it. But
I will watch the highlights.
I think the game's going to be won in midfield. I think both attacks are strong. I think Newcastle's defence is probably slightly weaker than yours, but I don't think it's
really?
far. Yeah, I think so.
I don't think so right now, especially with Varane out. I'd say they've got a stronger defence than us. More settled defence, maybe you could say.
Settled. I'm going to go 2-2.
Yeah, it does seem like a draw. Southampton against West Ham. I think this game, it's up for grabs, I think whoever wants it more on the day. And I think the fact that it's at St Mary's, they're going to want it more. I think Bella Kopjet scores from a Ward-Prowse corner and it finishes 1-0.
I think this is going to be a shocker.
I agree.
Two teams, I think, have been underperforming this year. I think Southampton have been underperforming for a good couple of years now. I actually wanted Hassan Hüttel initially as a manager.
You still want them now?
I'm not even opposed to him. I do quite like him as a coach.
Yeah.
I see what he's trying to do at Southampton, the route he's going down, but I think the owners have a big bearing on that. And West Ham, I think they've recruited quite well, but they've also been quite surprising in terms of, I don't think they've been particularly strong this year. I think Bowen in the last few games is coming on light again, which it's always nice to see when your mate does well. But I think it's a shocker, mate. I am going to go 1-1. Yeah.
It's tough, right? Because I feel like with West Ham, we're starting to see the Scamacca form, especially in the Conference League, where he's been on all cylinders so far. He's scoring quite a few goals. But yes, I don't know, man. It's just they're kind of rough at the moment, aren't they, West Ham? They're not really consistently creating chances, in my opinion. It's going to be tough. Liverpool versus Man City. I'm going to go with a draw, mate. I'm going to go 2-2.
I think it's going to be a cracker. When I say crack, I mean in terms of FPL, because I think Liverpool are going to, I think they are going to get ruined here, mate. Being at home, like we talked about earlier, I think that is something that will narrow the score line down a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think City are going to score quite early on. Like we saw Arsenal score early on against Liverpool last game. So, yeah, cracker, 4:30. I think this game is always a 4:30 on a Sunday for like the last fucking 6 or so years.
60 years it's been 4:30 on a Sunday. You've never seen a Manchester City versus Liverpool game at 12:30. It just doesn't make sense. It never happened. But
I'm going to go 4-2, City.
Really? I think it's a lot tighter than it's made out to be. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think 2-2's fair. We'll be back next week on Monday, I guess. We got some fixtures coming out on Tuesday. So yeah. interesting. We've got the Prime Video games next week. So we'll be back for those. Let us know how you get on in fantasy this week in the comment section down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. And we'll see you on Monday. Peace out.